Welcome to our 100th episode and to our 100th episode celebration episode. It's true. After a little over 2 years of this podcast, we have reached a numerical milestone. So I wanted to take this week to pause, to celebrate, to be proud of myself, pats myself on the back, to receive and to share some learnings and reflections that I have after hosting so many wonderful, deep conversations with incredible guests, through pulling together a lot of teaching episodes that are kind of like workshops or lectures, and through a couple of years of sharing what's on my heart and what is on my mind. In this episode, I'm going to get personal. I'm going to share from my own life, and I'm going to go through the main tenets, the rules, as it were, that I utilize for creativity, for creating new chapters, for casting different spells, and anyone who wants to go through a process of reinvention and growth. Hopefully, this will be useful to you as you are beginning a new way of life or a new project, a new cycle. I know that in your life, there are definitely some aspects like health or career or relationship or some kind of internal growth or a creative project or 2 or 3 or 17 that are probably at a kind of impasse or place where you need to sit back, reflect, assess. And hopefully what I share today will help you check in with where you are and or help to guide you if you are beginning something, if you are in a rut, or if you have been doing something for a while and you haven't celebrated it. Maybe you're reaching some kind of milestone like 11 years of being a parent or 3 months of being sober or 2 weeks of 10-minute meditation every morning and this is just a gentle encouragement. Wherever you are, there are things in your life that you must celebrate. So bake yourself a cake, buy yourself a gluten-free brownie, collect some wildflowers, write yourself a love letter, and celebrate yourself. So sit back. I'm going to share freely from my life, and let's begin the 100th episode of Moonbeaming. The first share is, and you already know this one, it is follow your intuition. My intuition had been telling me to create a podcast for years. For years I tried. This podcast is my 3rd attempt. The last time my intuition came in and nudged me to start this podcast, it was spring of 2020. And they showed me start at summer solstice. Start at the summer solstice, have that be the kickoff. I still had to do some repair work from a previous pod experience. So I didn't start this until autumn of 2020. It took that long for me to feel comfortable, like I had the capacity to share my voice. Here's the thing, gentle listener. Your intuition may be trying to get your attention for years, and you won't be able to do anything about it, or you might not be able to access the capacity or the resource for it. That is so okay. In the meantime, keep touching in with the energy, keep that energy alive, write down your dreams or goals, and then when you're ready, begin. Another nuance tufting out, tufting out of this weaving that I want to do is this is not either or, because if we wait until we're ready, the metaphor that comes to mind is when people are saying, well, you can't be in a relationship if you don't love yourself. I disagree. I think that relationships are a process of, in learning how to love unconditionally, then we can love ourselves more. A lot of the times in my life, I wasn't quite ready for something, or I didn't feel quite integrated enough, but I was integrated enough to say yes. I was integrated enough to feel the fear and do it anyway. So this isn't about waiting until you're 1000% sure to act on an intuitive download, but it is about feeling into what you need in order to access more resource and to really turn towards the yes. So I just want to be clear about that. I definitely think that everyone's life is so different. Everyone's occasions are so nuanced. In learning to love others, we then learn to love ourselves more, and then we learn to love others more, and on and on and on. And it's the same with a lot of different things. So I just wanted to call that out, right? The other way that my intuition will often come through for me, maybe it's my guides, maybe it's the universe, maybe it's spirit, maybe it's God, whatever you want to call it. It's that message, that energy that comes from beyond me or comes from a deep, wise future part of myself. It will usually tell me a time period. So a lot of times it'll come through with threes. It was very clear with this podcast. It said, do this until the chariot year. I knew that was this year. It was also about 3 years. And then check in and see what you're going to want to do next, or what you want to do with this project next. That framing really helps me to stay present. I've gotten that guide from spirit so many times in my life. It really helps me. Once I was at a job and I wasn't sure how long to stay, and my guides said, you'll know when it's time to leave. In the meantime, stay, get what you need, do a good job, learn what you need to learn, enjoy it, rest, surrender, and you'll know when it's time. And that is really useful and really helpful. You can always ask your guides or spirit, your deeper self, your future self, your intuition. You can always ask for more support, more help, and more information. People will think of intuition as a mechanism for knowing everything, like knowing what's going to happen, knowing what's going to happen in the future. In my experience, sure, you can be psychic, you can get clues, you can get downloads. Sometimes it happens through deja vu, sometimes it happens through dreams, sometimes it happens through tarot or through other forms of divination. That's real, 100%. In my experience, intuition is as much about not knowing as it is knowing. And I think I spoke about that with Natalie Miles. You can go back to our episode, but we went really deep into intuition. And I think I've done other episodes on intuition, so you can just scroll through and find them. When I moved to Los Angeles a very long time ago, I did not know what was going to happen. I kept getting the message, so I figured out a way to get here. And now I know why I moved here. But that unfolded during many years. They say hindsight's 2020, right? Now I kind of know, or a couple of times something happened and I was like, oh yes, this is why I'm here. I got my diagnosis here. I very much believe after about 7 years of searching for a diagnosis, seeing tons of doctors, paying thousands of dollars, feeling absolutely confused. I finally found the doctor that was patient and that took 13 vials of blood from me and said, we're going to figure this out. This isn't normal. Like that was a big reason, I think, for me coming to LA. There's many other reasons I won't get into, but you have to stay the course and you have to trust, right? People also think intuition will solve all your problems and make everything immediately easy. Like the sky will open up, the red carpet will roll out. And that happens sometimes. That does happen sometimes. Sometimes a hallmark of following your intuition, being in flow, surrendering, feeling really aligned, feeling really great. Yes, things all line up one by one. Absolutely. And also, that's not always the case. We can't just look for ease equals synchronicity, ease equals my intuition being right. When I moved to LA, it was so hard for the first 3 to 4 years. It was hard to find an affordable place to live. It was hard to find fair work. It was hard to make friends. My relationship suffered greatly. We were under so much stress. It was not easy. It was not like the hardest, but it wasn't the easiest. There were so many lessons learned from that challenging time. Some of my greatest lessons have come from challenging times. I'm not saying that this is what I would prefer. I am actually actively asking the universe to bring me lessons and teachings through softness, ease, pleasure, and connection. Listening. Hi, universe. True story. And also, we do learn who we are when we go through challenges. And life is not, for many of us, life is not going to be easy 100% of the time. This is a teaching of so many tarot cards. The Chariot, Strength, the Tower, Justice, the Hanged One, Death. We could be here all day. So our intuition doesn't automatically equal ease, but it is a GPS. It does give us inklings of what to try next, where to go next, what to do next. And that's how it's important. That's how it can work for us. So follow your intuition. What keeps coming up for you? What ideas or dreams will not leave you alone? What do you need to do to make space for those dreams, to archive, write down those messages? How can you start where you are with what you have? For some people, they write down a date. In 3 months, I'll start writing my book. I was reading about this person who asked ChatGPT to help them start running after a long period they had of injury and illness, and they stuck to that plan. And after 1 month, they had run their first mile. So listen to your intuition, figure out what you need to do to begin, and make it easy for you. Make it easy for whatever it is you're going to do to be a success or be something you stick to. Set up the right environment, work with what you have, tune in, go forth by starting where you are. Okay, here's the next one. Show up as yourself. I know, it's a cliche. Just be yourself. It's such a cliche. You're like, yeah, but which version of me? Who am I today, right? Show up as the version you are today. Show up as who you are today. And show up as true to yourself as possible. Show up with your vulnerability. Show up with your honesty. Share from your heart. Part of all of our purpose, the main one, I would argue, no one's arguing with me, the main one I would share of our purpose in this life is to be ourselves. It's to explore what we want to do, not what someone else wants us to do, not what society tells us to do, and we do it and then we'll fit in and then all of our problems will be solved. Not what we think will make us happy because other people are doing it and they seem happy, but will actually make us happy. satisfied, content, alive, invigorated. Show up as much as you can as yourself, not a performance, not in should energy of yourself, not in the person you think you should be. Show up as you. It is part of your spiritual mission. There's also the energetics of this. And what I mean is, no matter what, when I turn on the mic, when I put my headphones on, when I'm here with you, I am in my home base frequency. The energy of my intention is really clear. I believe in the power of sound. I believe in the power of energetic transmissions. I sort of sometimes think of these episodes as like a container of a beautiful teaching or learning or beautiful exchange as put in amber or something like that, right? I think a lot of you have noticed, especially when I have guests on, will often vibe really hard. We're creating a container of the energy. We'll be vibing really hard. It'll feel kind of trancy. We'll be in channel. We'll really be in flow, you know? And that's a container. I'm creating this container for all of you. And I do it similar as one does to both setting their energy and setting their energetic field, which I teach many classes on this. And we do our energy sessions inside of the Patreon. And it's also similar to casting a circle, calling the corners, calling in the directions, and centering. This podcast is absolutely a container. I have this t-shirt I made with a picture of the earth on the front of it. And then on the back, it says, consider the energy you bring to a space. This here is a space. We're in this space together for sure. I am incredibly mindful of what I choose to fill it with. So whenever possible, show up in the energy of what you would like to experience and what you would like to transmit and what you would like to receive. This is so much of the work and the practice. This is being present, basically, in a nutshell. And how often, though, do we need to be reminded of this, to be called back to this? I show up here grounded, centered, curious, hopeful, alive. I show up excited to share. I show up with trust, and I show up with kindness for my capacity. Right before I went to record this, I was outlining this in bed because I'm not feeling amazing. I'm feeling kind of low energy, which is not the same as bad energy. It's just lower energy, right? In one of my last classes, I think it was Decision Magic, I shared photos of Matisse and Frida Kahlo making art from bed. They're really cool. You should look them up, or you can go back to your Decision Magic lecture and you can see them. If we wait until we are 100% ready for everything to be perfect, for us not to be sick, for us to know totally everything, or for someone else to do it for us, we might be waiting for the rest of our lives. So show up as yourself, start where you are, be with where you are. This, to me, also, of course, goes back to capacity. I'm very vocal about getting long COVID and what long COVID did to all aspects of my life. I had to shorten a season last year because this podcast relies on the parts of my brain that are being most affected by the virus, the ability to share coherently, succinctly, to remember what I was trying to say at the beginning of a sentence that I began, right? It really affected my memory and my executive functioning. And I'm going to be real with you. I had a lot of discomfort around sharing and a lot of discomfort around still doing this as someone who isn't quote unquote healed. I'm not yet where I want to be cognitively. But here's the thing. I may never be where I was cognitively again. For sure, I'm making little steps. My memory has improved. Yes, my ability to communicate has improved. I remember almost all of the things I wanted to say by the time I get to the end of the sentence. Not always, but almost always. But I'm certainly not where I was, and I'm not where I'd like to be. But I show up anyway. I show up. I use this as an opportunity to be vulnerable, as well as an opportunity to work on the things that illness took away from me, right? Because that's the, what do you call it? Chicken or egg. Is my brain going to get better if I don't use it? You know, it's kind of a both and. We want to rest and we also want to create new neural pathways and get our memory back. And this is one of the things that helps me. So there might be something uncomfortable or vulnerable for you right now or in an aspect of your life that is the very medicine that you need, right? So you can think about that in your life. What are the things that are uncomfortable or make you feel kind of vulnerable, but that also might help you repair, might help you move forward, might help you grow? On that tip, on the tip of showing up as yourself and getting responses from others, and this is a question I've gotten quite a bit. It came up in clear channels. It's come up in the Patreon, and that is, what do you do with haters? What do you do? What do you do when you get a bad review, when someone sends you mean DMs, when you get horrible emails, someone's insulting you in the comments, and so on and so forth? Obviously, this could be its own episode. I wanted to pull out just a couple of things around this that I don't always hear spoken about. The first thing is right now, like what I want to share, it's very timely. All of the attacks that so many marginalized communities are under from our government, from citizens of this country, trans folks, drag queens, non-binary folks, gender expansive folks, chronically ill folks, Black folks, Indigenous folks, Asian people, so many others, the list goes on and on. Saying show up as yourself, be yourself to a trans person or a trans child, that cannot be the right message. A friend of mine recently shared this story, a story of theirs on LinkedIn, of all places, and received vitriolic transphobia that had them reeling. Another friend of mine is fat, and almost every time they post on social media, which is their job, by the way, they make a living that way, as many of us do now, they get attacked by fat-phobic jerks. It's really nuanced. A lot of marketing folks or wellness folks or self-development folks say, be yourself. But what if yourself is a marginalized identity? For me, I have a ton of privilege. I also do have a history, a background in being publicly humiliated growing up. I also have a history of being stalked by multiple people, multiple times in my life. And it just so coincides with the sensations of being watched that often accompany hateful messages or cruel reviews or something like that. So, for example, someone finding my personal email address and sending me really nasty messages, it can be more complicated and more nuanced for some of us than just straight up saying, ignore the haters, ignore the haters. You know, that's what people say, just ignore it. And yeah, sure, you want to limit your engagement with that as much as possible. For me, it's also a call to practice safety with myself, to do my energy work, to set up my energetic boundaries. And sadly, it's a fact. I don't like this fact, but it's true. If you have like more than a couple of folks who know you or know about your work, those people are going to have judgments. There are some unwell people in the world. And often a bad review or a series of abusive emails or really hateful comments or someone having a bad day, not knowing where to put that energy and taking it out on you. We project onto others unconsciously all day long. If we are not centered in the present moment, we will throw our stuff all over one another, won't we? And for me, my trauma brain can easily connect one incident with every single thing in the world, and then I get out of current time. So part of my personal work is staying in current time where I am safe in my body, and there are people that love and appreciate me. I speak to the folks who are enhanced by what I share, you know? When I am vulnerable and when I share from my heart, I get the most extreme feedback, meaning I get people saying, "Thank you so much for sharing. I really appreciate this." And I get the opposite. This person is, "I can't believe they're sharing about themselves. This is so whatever. They need to stick to whatever, whatever it is they came for," right? And I think that opens up into like, again, this other discussion that could be for another day, but people have a lot of warped and outdated ideas about what creative and spiritual people and facilitators or anyone in the helping or sharing professions should be like. That includes people's misogyny, you know, around how people should show up in service, particularly women and femmes, their entitlement around what they want, their insistence that we are to be these healing ATMs, just doling out help forever and ever and not allowed to be human beings with highs and lows and challenges. Friends, people are allowed to go through it. Rabbis and teachers and pop stars and senators and artists and moms and yoga instructors and whoever you wish weren't going through it because it makes you feel uncomfortable are allowed to be going through it. Just like you. You are allowed to go through it. The only other aspect of this I find odd is that folks who come across my work often consider themselves spiritual. And for me, one of the only global commonalities of spirituality, as far as I can tell, is kindness and compassion. And last I checked, just because you don't prefer how someone shares or you don't like that they're sharing about themselves, I don't know that it's kind or compassionate to give them a bad review, right? You can just move along. We know that it's a great rule of thumb to not pay attention to or get hooked on extremes. Not extreme love, because that's dehumanizing, not pedestaling. Remember what often ends up happening when someone love bombs you? Usually not awesome things end up happening. And also not to get hooked on the really horrific, terrible feedback, the really hateful, really vitriolic feedback that just seems like someone's very, very, very much not having a good day. So yes, show up as yourself. Yes, it's nuanced. Yes, there's a lot of ways to deal with it, but don't stop sharing yourself. Don't stop opening your heart. Don't stop sharing with the people who need to hear it. Number 3, remember your intention and purpose. Whenever we have a project, it's good to have the foundations of intention. Without clear intentions, clear points, clear reasons for doing something, it can be easy to get lost or feel adrift or try to do too much and get scattered with what you're doing. Listen, you're going to have doubt. That is normal. I read this share by Morgan House, who wrote, "There are two types of successful people, those with imposter syndrome and sociopaths." So listen, it's normal for you to have doubt or fear or feel like you're not good enough. This is so normal. It's not a reason not to try it. When we align with our intentions and purpose and guides, the energies we want to tune into, the rules, so to speak, that can really help center us when we feel wobbly. There's that great Buddhist question, I'm paraphrasing now, before we speak. Is it kind? Is it honest? Is it useful? And similarly, our intentions, our purposes, or our goals can create guidelines and guardrails. And you might need, in addition to intentions and goals and purposes and energies, certain rules. Could be rules of time, word count, due dates, writing from the scar, not the wound, staying within a certain budget, a certain other container. That's for you to feel into for yourself. The point of this podcast and a lot of my current work is to educate, inspire, affirm, support, and expand. And I try to do that for you, for me, while also enjoying it, enjoying the process. I'm a very process-oriented based person, shocker. So I want to enjoy what I'm doing, another shocker. And so I center that enjoyment and curiosity as well. And that's why you don't hear me discuss a lot of 101 content. It's not my interests right now. There's also a ton of 101 options out there for anyone to find. This podcast explores depth psychology, intuition, symbology, energy, creativity, archetypes, imagination, lunar technology, making the magical mundane, the mundane magical, ethical business, feminism, philosophy, and more. Like you, I'm fascinated by so many different things. I don't only want to discuss one thing all the time. I want to weave a bunch of things together and explore and expand. And there's no other medium where I could share this. Where else could I talk about a tarot card for 1 hour? Like, where else, you know? And to that point, if this was just a tarot podcast, I might lose my marbles. Don't get me wrong. I love me some tarot, but it has to function in the greater pie chart of my life and mind by nature. I'm interested in so many different things, just like you. And again, if you have a tarot podcast and you love it and you could do 9,000 episodes of only that, I love that for you. I really do. You have to stay close to what you know and what you love and your true nature, right? But there's no other place I could speak with all the fascinating guests that come on the podcast from all walks of life, all different professions. And I only want to have more varied and diverse people on the show, to be honest. This is how I stay curious and engaged and enjoy this podcast. And hopefully that translates into you being inspired, affirmed, supported, and expanded. I am someone who has never fit in anywhere. I've always been interested in a wide range of subjects. And I share for the similarly, is that right? Some similarly minded, the skeptical seekers, the creatives, the sensitives, those who are in the world, but not of it. And it's an honor and a pleasure to get to create such a space with you in this container. That leads me to my last share for today, and that is have trust. Trust others, trust yourself, trust the universe while detaching from a very minutely specific outcome. Now, we all want everything we do to take off, be a great material success. Again, super normal. Having hopes, normal. Dreams, they're normal. They're part of living life. But I have found that when I put those hopes and dreams into very rigid material or like specific outcomes, that is what creates a toxic expectation because I'm putting the cart before the horse, metaphorically. I'm saying in my mind, when I get to XYZ, then this will be worth it. Then this will be a success. And that takes me away from the present moment. And it also takes me away from enjoying what I'm doing. And as I've said, I'm really process-based. I really need to enjoy the process, or else it's very difficult for me to find motivation. While I think it's important to have goals, it's part of any business, any project that is going to support you, especially financially. Let's get real. It can also put a kind of pressure on it, especially when we're in the incubation phase, the seed phase, when we're in the new moon phase of it, even the waxing moon phase of it. It shuts down that creative, innocent part of us. And it's that creative part of us that can also be very vulnerable. That's the part that needs space to breathe and space to be. It's also this paradox, another theme of this year, at least it's been the case for me. There's this teaching that when you aren't forcing, when you're not looking for the person to date, that's when they show up, which is also how I met my partner. Neither of us were looking. It was absolutely the opposite. Maybe you've had similar things. You know, who here has had that experience? You're pushing on finding an answer or a solution. You're like, I need to figure this out. And then you take a walk, you go on a hike, and all of a sudden, ding, you get an answer. Or you run into someone on the trail that you haven't seen in a year. You make a coffee date. Your coffee date, you have a conversation that underscores or pings your intuition, and so on and so forth. A few years ago, I was pushing, trying to find a space for my studio. I had about 3 weeks to find another space. I was looking everywhere. I had a lot of anxiety around it. One night, my partner said, hey, let's walk to this restaurant by our house. And so we're on a nice walk. We were just chit-chatting, and we passed by a sign that said for rent. And my partner said, call the number. And I said, it's Sunday at 7. I'm not calling. I will call tomorrow, but I bet it'll cost too much. I'm sure it'll cost too much. My partner said, call now. And I called it. Someone picked up on the second ring, and I asked how much their place for rent was. It was literally my budget. And I looked at it the next day and moved in. Life doesn't always work out like that. I know it doesn't. It has happened enough times for me in that way where I do know I can trust flow. I can take away the murkiness that anxiety and pushing brings me, right? Because sometimes we get so caught up we can't even see what's right in front of us. I know that I can trust life. I know that I can trust others. And I know that I can trust the universe. As long as these other above components I spoke about are in the equation somewhat, I can have trust. Similar to faith, it might have to be a practice. It can be challenging. Having faith when we are going through it, when we're deep in it, when we have no idea what's going to happen, yes, it can be a challenge. It is part of the practice of living, trusting in yourself, your inclinations, your intuition, your inspirations, having trust in others. Others can come along and help you. I have had to trust in you, gentle listener. I have had to trust you, and I've had to have a great deal of respect for you. I have a great deal of respect for you. I'm very honored that you're here. I'm very honored for your attention, because what's the point otherwise? You're brilliant. You're smart. I'm having a conversation with you. And from time to time, as you feel called, I get to practice receiving. I talk a lot about radical generosity. It's this way of abundance. And so long as we're giving from a full cup, like we feel present moment in our body, in right capacity, not super extracting from ourselves, sharing from our heart, that can create this beautiful energetic of reciprocity. And that is in your engagement and your involvement. It's you engaging in these topics with an open heart and an open mind. It's you allowing yourself to open to transformation, to become more curious, to not agree with everything I share or what the guests share, but to question it and take what works for you, to think about where you feel inspired and affirmed and supported, and where you can apply some of this advice into actions and implementing it in your life and your world as it makes sense for you to do. It's also, for those who can do it, supporting the podcast through sponsorship or Patreon, shopping our studio store, signing up for our classes where we go much deeper, leaving a 5-star review, sharing it on social media with a friend or two. That's reciprocity too. Like I'll often leave 5-star reviews on podcasts I really enjoy. I'll often share the work of people I really respect on social media. You know, on this show and in my classes, I'm always citing other people that I'm like, oh yeah, I heard this great idea from this person, or I took this class, or in this book I read, and this reminded me of this, right? Like, it's like, I love it. It's one of my favorite things to do, radical generosity. So trust yourself, trust others, trust the universe. I trust that the universe will deliver the insight I need to keep going. I trust that when I'm in conversation with the universe from the foundations of my intuitions, my intentions, and I'm showing up as myself, I will be supported. It might not be in the way I thought. Remember, let's detach from the most specific of outcomes, right? It's kind of like looking for the perfect black turtleneck. I have found it. I cannot remember now where I found it. I'm so sorry. I want to say it was like Madewell or something. But you know, you're like looking for the exact thing. And yes, sometimes we do find it. I did find the black turtleneck. I did. And also, when we allow ourselves to be open, then we can receive what is already there, what is already coming through. We can take the next steps and we can enjoy life and be in awe of the wonder and mystery of life. So this is my little non-math equation. I suppose it's a bit of a recipe for projects moving forward, some of, what we're doing in our life together with other people. And I put a little call out to our listenership, our community, to share some takeaways, some things they've learned or received from my work. And so we'll end this episode by hearing from them.
Hi, Sarah. This is Joy, and I just wanted to tell you how helpful the energetic hygiene practices that you shared has been for me. Releasing energy that isn't mine and doesn't serve me, and calling back my energy every day, and then creating an energetic bubble and calling in colors to support me have just been such helpful practices that I practice on the daily, and if I don't, I really feel it, and it makes such a big difference. Really, they've enabled me to go from a place of being stuck and anxious about what ifs to moving across the country to live on my own for the first time and to pursue my interests and goals. And I just want to thank you so much. And I appreciate you so much.
Hi, Sarah and Moonbeaming listeners. I wanted to share how much guided meditations and visualizations have been really supporting me lately. Meditating without guidance is obviously a good thing, and it's an ongoing intention for me, but like many people with anxiety and ADHD, that can sometimes be really, really difficult, and the experience in itself can be triggering and counterproductive. So if I'm feeling particularly lost or confused or lonely or afraid, it can be such a reassuring and nourishing thing to have a trusted voice there to help me through and help me into the mind state I'm just struggling to access on my own. And it's really helpful to create a bit of structure and routine by returning to the same recording regularly, I find. So I've been enjoying Sarah's own guided meditations on her Patreon. And I also keep going back to a visualization that I've actually been listening to for years now by a fellow Moonbeaming listener, Zanetta of Sound Art Magic. So I'm just really grateful that people channel their love and so much care into these tools, which often make the difference for me between a ruined day and a minor emotional breakthrough. And it really inspires me to focus more on creating some of my own guided meditations as part of my own work in sound bath facilitation. And that's it from me. I'm just wishing everybody so much love, peace, and joy. Thank you.
Hello, all. My name is Holly Hilgenberg, and I am an artist and creative community builder based in Northern California who goes by the name Stained Ghost. And lately, I've been finding energy and strength in taking action towards the life I want to live. So those concrete steps like sending the email, inquiring about selling my art at someone's store, or sending in a grant application, while also trusting my intuition and the universe to open up in ways I may have never expected nor can plan for. And it's really helped me be in more of a flow state of expansion and has lessened my anxiety and stress in being more clear in what I can control, in trusting in what I can't when I am taking that aligned action. I feel very much like it's incorporating the lessons of the Lover's Year into the Chariot Year, and I feel more powerful than ever.
Okay, everyone. This brings our 100th episode to an end. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. Thank you for sharing. I will be back next week with a tarot teaching episode. I'll give you a hint. It begins with a T, ends with an R, and there's an ow in between. I think some of you might know what we're going to be talking about. Okay, sending you so much love. Be good to yourselves and others. See you soon.